Hello, everyone. This is Jasper. Today, I'm going to talk about the topic is about creating the CS culture through Design Sprint. So, my name is Jasper. I come from Taiwan. I'm a Taiwanese, and currently, I'm working in a company called Unext, and also I'm a co-founder of the design consulting firm called Creative Mashimashi. So, if you are interested about my topic, feel free to contact me on LinkedIn or Twitter. So let me briefly share about what is Unext. Unext is a subscription-based video distribution platform. We are not only have the video content, we also have the music and book service. Basically, it's like all-in-one entertainment service. You can watching, reading, and listening on our platform. Unext has the largest, biggest market share as a local OTT platform in Japan. Today, I'm going to talk about two things, about CS culture and Design Sprint. I would like to share with you about my experience in Unext. How did I using the Design Sprint to creating the CS culture on the journey we are trying to build a better collaborative and human-centered environment. Before I jump into the talk, I would like to ask you one question. What is the CS culture in your organization? Is it like posted everywhere? You have a lot of posted, a team is doing the brainstorming, doing the Kanban board, do the ideation, or you have the creative space, people can generate and creating the prototype. Or you have the framework, like classic double diamond, like build the right product, build the product right. Or even you have different type of framework, like lean, agile, design thinking. When you search on Google, you will find out like lean, agile, design thinking with this kind of chart. So basically the team are using design thinking to discover users' pain point and finding the needs, using lean startup to quick validate their concept, and using agile and scrum to quick ship the product, their service, the feature, and get the feedback from the customer, iterate it again and again. A lot of time, when the stakeholders or the organization invest this type of framework, we try to have different like approach to have a better process to solving the problem and quick shipping the product. However, there's no magic happen in those framework. And a lot of times stakeholders cannot find the value why we need to do that. We didn't even building the better product or even didn't build a better impact for the business. So I think this one part is missing. It's about understanding about the maturity about UX and CX. So you can also find this online. We separate into 4 layers. The first one is awareness. Is a company organization aware about the UX, CX? And the second layer is like company willing to invest, how much money they put in the training, the budget for the different type of framework, for hiring for the different type of designer, researcher, and specialist. And also the third layer is about how company think about planning and strategy when they building the future plan. Do they think about CX and UX together, or even for the DX? And also the end of the maturity model is really about a culture change. And to make the culture change, actually, it takes very long time and it's very hard to achieve because there's some part is missing. It's about people's mindset. When you think about the definition of the culture, I will briefly say it's like the way we behave, the way we work, we communicate, we collaborate with our colleagues, and how we interaction with each other in the organization across different company, and also the value we believe. It's really based on this. Depend on you will decide your company culture. For me personally, I think the good CS culture, including these few things, human-centered, and also collaborative, iterative, and innovative. And one thing I just mentioned about is about their mindset. Mindset changing is very hard, and it takes a long time to change in people's behavior. It was a long journey, and also every company, every organization start from different like starting point. For example, you have huge organization, very big organization, you try to do innovation. You are the small startup, you try to shipping your product, validate your concept, shipping the service quick as soon as possible, testing the market. or you are the mid-sized firm, you try to improving and your service find growth on your product and service. A lot of time, every company starts from very different point, right? When we're talking about the mindset change, it was very hard for different types of organization, no matter which size of organization you are in. As what I say, it's very long journey, and there's many traps when on your journey when you try to change in the CS culture, and there's many potential traps you might facing. So today I'm gonna to share and explain with you there's three type of traps it might happening on your organization, and how I use my experience to using design sprint, different type of sprint to solving these three problems. These three problems we might facing. The first one is about customer understanding. The second one is about culture and office politics. The third one is about speed and iteration. As what I say, you need some probe to ignite this CS culture change. And what I use is about the framework design sprint. You might heard about design sprint before. Basically, it was separate into 6 different type of phase: from us understanding, define the problem, sketch, decided the idea, and we build a prototype and test it to validate our concept. We schedule these 6 phase into 5 days, and then a lot of time when a team trying to run design sprint, it really helping you to avoid the barrier I mentioned above. So I will explain with you from the next slide. So the first thing is about customer understanding, right? So nowadays, to be honestly, there's having too much data around the office. So when you can see the like the stakeholders, everyone, the decision maker, like a product owner, PM, business analysis, right? We always surrounding by a lot of dashboard, Excel sheet, tons of data. Most of the time, a lot of stakeholders, they are missing very important insight from this big data. Actually, when we surrounded by this number of big data, actually, it really pushing us farther and farther away from real customer voice. There's a theory, it's called big data and thick data, proposed by Cheshire Wang. So you can find her TED Talk online. It's really awesome and very insightful. I really recommend it. So she mentioned about a lot of organization, when they making decision based on the big data, they kind of ignore the why it happened from the real user behavior, user voice. It just make everything farther and farther away. So for me, to getting the user insight is actually the cost is much more less than you invest in the dashboard or data, big data. So actually what you need to do is just set up, you can start a survey, start a user interview, set up a camera, observing your user, their behavior, how they interaction, and listen from their pinpoint. When you start to do that, you will find out there's a lot of different things, different insight you will find. And this really helpful to create a good CS culture when you really care about the customer problem. However, there's a lot of time when a lot of organizations hire a researcher and start to research, but there's nothing happen. This is some part of is missing. So what I want to say, actually, this very important part when I try to run the research and how could we using the research data to let the decision maker to understanding the customer more holistic perspective. So actually, the missing part is about the sharing session. A lot of time when the researcher or the analysis, when they finish the report, they don't have proper chance to share with the stakeholders, and stakeholder is surrounded by all the data. It's very hard for them to make decision. So when I was in UNEX, I found out Sprint can really help about that. Let me introduce about research Sprint. So when I joined UNEX in 2019, basically we have nothing. We don't have anything like research. We don't have the user voice. We don't have the interview or user insight. So I started everything from zero. So basically, people don't understand anything about it, and there's really lack of awareness about user and custom voice. So I decided I want to run the research sprint. So what is research sprint? So basically, research sprint is a one-day sprint. The biggest purpose for the research sprint is try to let stakeholders to understanding customer voice and customer insight more holistically. We understanding their viewpoint and we try to solving their problem together. So research sprint, of course, you need to start from research. So basically, as they spend 1 to 3 weeks from recruiting, user interview, collecting the data, analysis, creating report. And after I finish the report, I organize this research sprint. The biggest purpose of what I say is let stakeholders to get awareness of the real user voice. And also the good thing is like we turn the insight to the actionable ideas. That's very important for people to understanding how valuable insight can turn to valuable and actionable idea. So basically, we focus on sharing. The first day, in the morning, we do the insight sharing, how might we session, how might we create something, and we do the journey mapping and target setting, crazy A, do the ideation, brainstorming, solution sketch, vote, and pick at the end of the day. Again, this is not focusing on building the prototype and validate from the customer voice. The biggest purpose is learn from our customer and view things from different perspectives. So when is the timing to run the research sprint? Actually, when you realize there's a lack of awareness of the user voice around your organization, around your team, it's very good time to organize a research sprint, gathering people who is interested about this topic and discussion about it and show them what is a real user voice, what is insightful data, what is the comprehensive data for them to everyone to do ideation, brainstorming together. What kind of topic is really good for research sprint? So from my experience in UNEX, basically, I think find out the biggest elephant in the room. Why did I say that? Because usually the biggest elephant in the room, it's really hard to find the insight in the big data. And this is the problem, people unwilling to touch it because too complicated, too difficult to solving the problem from this side. So when you try to run the design sprint and research sprint and you pick up these topics, actually, it's really helping the stakeholders rethinking about the problem from different perspective. So the research sprint really helping for your team to have a better understanding for the customer. And this is the quote I want to share with everyone. This is quote from Tom Chi. So he mentioned in 2018 Design Sprint Conference, nobody changing their behavior for the neutral outcome. So basically I put this in my mind. So every time when I run the research sprint or any type of sprint, I will observing how the user behavior, how the stakeholders, how was the room ambient, how does the atmosphere look like, which steps works, which steps not work. So understanding how could we improving for the next or different sprint next time. The second traps you might fail during on your journey to creating a CS culture is about the culture issue and office politics. So basically, with office politics and culture issues, a lot of time it's really slow everything down. Because of stakeholders, it's really hard for us to find a consensus. And there's a lot of bias because everyone stands from different perspective. A lot of time, you need to wait for approval while you are in the different type of like a communication with different stakeholders or everyone have some like politics going on. You really slow a lot of things down. You cannot moving everything forward quickly with the quick speed and have a better teamwork. So this is the concept, the theory mentioned by the anthropologist Edward T. Hall. So he has a book mentioned about Beyond the Culture. It's talking about high context culture and low context culture. So one thing like low context culture is like America, Australia. High context culture is like China and Japan. So basically, I came to Japan in 2017. I realized this is really total different like environment and the culture when I experienced in the America or in Taiwan. Let me give you some example. For example, the language issue, the language different. So this is the very very simple phrase when you can hear about like Japanese. It's called hi. So actually for hi, when you're using Google Translate, actually it's yes, but a lot of time it didn't means yes, I agree with you. It just means I heard it. It didn't mean anything. And the other part is about kangai to oku. So when people say it about these words, when you're using Google Translate, you will find out they want to say is I will think about them, but actually it's not. It means they try to sometimes and most of the time we use it. It means we try to reject you in the polite way. So actually it's no. So in this high context culture, there's a lot of like a nuance in the conversation or in the room. Because of this, it's really hard for people to have the better teamwork communication during the development process, or we try to have a better ideation. A lot of time we will say the people, if you don't understanding the atmosphere, we will say you are cookie yomenai. You kind of cannot reading the ambient, understanding the nuance around the room. So it's very important to have understanding about what should be noticed during a conversation in this high context culture. The other thing is about decision-making process. This is the one type of decision-making process in some culture. So basically, when I was in different like low context culture, a lot of time when we try to generate some idea, have some discussion, we just bring everyone in a room. We can, negotiation and discussion and debating about which one is right, which one is wrong. But a lot of time in different type of culture, before the official meeting, people were started to have different meeting with these stakeholders, and then have the other meeting with B stakeholders, and the third meeting with different type of stakeholders. When the official meeting is happening, actually no one is saying something disagreement, because everyone just raised their hand and agree with the proposal, because the decision is already made before the official meeting. This is really time consuming. It takes a long time. And most of the time, based on this type of the decision making process, most of the time we find out the solution is the compromise solution based on every stakeholders. It's not the base solution for our customer. Because of the culture issue, office politics issue, it's really hard for the teamwork. So the sprint really can help in this problem. When I'm facing this problem in Japan's culture, I try to organize the sprint called ideation sprint. The most important things for the ideation sprint, the biggest purpose is generate idea from different stakeholders, from different perspective. So I organize this 2 days ideation sprint. First, of course, we need to conduct the research, gathering the data, gathering the information, gathering the insight we can find for the problem. And we spend the first day try to understanding this problem deeply. It's very similar like what we have for the research stream. We also have the second day, it's about ideation day. It's for focus on generating ideas. As what I say, for the ideation sprint, it's very important to gathering all the stakeholders. So most of the time, I will invite the engineer, I will invite the business side, I will invite designer, invite a PM, stay in the same room. We try to figure out what is most feasible ideas. So when I said about ideation sprint, it's not really some like impossible idea or moonshot idea. It really want to find some idea is actionable. So it's just very important to invite engineer or development team in the room, because it's really helpful for us to think about the feasibility part. What is the timing to run ideation sprint? As what I mentioned, when you find out there's a kind of silo across the company, lacking of the trust or slow in the process, when you feel this is very hard for the teamwork communication, I think it's really the good timing for you to run ideation sprint. What kind of topics is good for ideation sprint? I think the topic, when you relate it to most of the stakeholders, and it's also meet cost, we can try to realize in a very short period of time, and also have the big impact. Why we need to pick up the big impact? Actually, because you invite most of the stakeholders in a room, we want to show them how much this sprint can create a different outcome than before. So it's very important to invite all the stakeholders, find out the mid-cost project, and have a big impact. Because of the design sprint factors, there's a feature called work together alone. So most of the time when we do ideation, do the brainstorming, we work together, but we stay in the same room, but we work alone. With the work together alone, it's really helping us for solving the problem. What I mentioned is about the language issue, because a lot of time we don't need too much communication. We just generate idea from our side, and we're sharing our concept, what we think, and with the stakeholders after we finish the ideation. The other part is about silence voting. A lot of time, to find out the best solution, we need the silence voting. It's really helping us to find out what is the best solution for our customer, instead of find out the best solution, what the boss really like, or the highest paid people really like, and or find out a compromise solution. Of course, we will provide the decision maker have the final call, final decision for the final ideas. One thing I think it really need to be careful, and especially in this high context culture. And this is a phrase came from the transplanting the tree. So basically, when we try to transplanting the tree, we need to be careful about the root. When we try to move the tree from A position to the B position, if we didn't take care of the roots, the tree might be lack of the nutrition, and it might be dead in the end of in the new place, right? So the phrase is really when we try to change the culture, when we try to have the organization mindset change, we need to think, especially in this high context culture, we need to be careful about what we do. So we need to spend more time for communication with the people who really care about the problem, who care about the issue. So this is a phrase called nemawashi in Japan. So basically, when we try to do some culture change, do some big project, we spend a lot of time and explain with stakeholders and try to get their support to what we want to do. It's very similar how you transplant the tree. You want to protect the roots well when we try to have the culture shift, culture change. The last thing I want to say is about speed and iteration. So actually, this from my perspective, this is cause for everything. When we try to have a better iterative culture with a good speed, most of the time we are waiting for the feedback. Even your organization have the Scrum, you shipping your product, shipping your feature like a bi-weekly or bi-weekly basis. However, we need to evaluate it. We need to collect the data, get a user feedback, maybe 1 month, 3 months later to get on the feedback. When we try to get on the feedback in monthly basis, it's really for us to making iterative culture. Sometimes a lot of time we are waiting for the next meeting. So during the quick feedback, the data from the customer, from the stakeholders, it's really I think the sprint really can helping you to solving this problem. So last sprint I want to share is about the normal design sprint. The normal design sprint, actually, we focus on making idea happen, and we quick validate it and learn from our customer. So this is the 5-day sprint framework. Of course, we need to spend some time, 1 or 3 weeks for our research for these topics, and we spend the day 0 for the problem framing, try to figure out what is the biggest problem we try to solve, and then we do the information sharing, sketch, storyboarding, do the ideation, and then we generate a prototype and testing. This is a framework, Design Sprint 3.0, designed by the Design Sprint Academy. So you can also find this resource online. It's really helpful for you if you're trying to run the full design sprint. And I think Design Sprint 3.0 is really helpful for your organization to generate ideas and then quick validate with your customer. So when is the timing to run design sprint? That's what I say at the beginning of the big project. When your team don't know where to go, should we go this way or go this direction? Run the full design sprint. Try to helping your team learn from the customer, get a feedback quickly. Try to be more iteratively. What kind of topics? For me, when you have the big bet, it's a big budget, like big project, or the big renewal or redesign for the existing project. It's really helpful for the team to stay together in the same room without any distraction, and then focusing on solving this problem, and bring the prototype and share with and validate it with your customer in the end of the day. Most important things, because of the design sprint, have the time control. Even in each steps, in each day, in each process, we also have the very strict time frame. Is about the last day the user is waiting for your prototype to test. So most of the stakeholders will feel the pressure. I need to, there's in the end of day, I need to building something. I need to come up with ideas. I need to build something to share with my client or the customer, right? So it's very important with this time control. It really helping the team to moving forward quickly, making decision quickly, build the prototype and get the data as soon as possible. And we can pivot or moving for the next steps. So let me bring you to the conclusion. So basically, when you try to have the CS culture change, or you might have the culture shift, you try to be more customer centered, you try to be more collaborative, teamwork, you try to have more iterative speed, try to start it with the design sprint. It's really good for you, good probe for you to start it, the culture change. So today I mentioned about 3 types of sprint. The first one is about research sprint. Second one is about ideation sprint. The third one is about design sprint. It really helping the team to more customer focus, better teamwork, and quick validation. When people ask me how design sprint can change people's behavior, to be honestly, based on my personal experience in Japan, I have to say one design sprint can change anything. You have to do less but often. So the quotes I mentioned in the previous slide, I mentioned no one was changing their behavior for the neutral outcome. So try to observing how the people interacts each other, behave during the sprint, and try to improving every time when you have the new sprint. So we based on my personal experience, when I was in Japan, because of the culture issue, the language issue, I tried to rearrange some component inside design sprint and design the research sprint, ideation sprint, and also the full design sprint. So it's very important for you to also think about what is your culture and what is your context in your organization, and try to customize it inside your organization. So last thing I want to say is about BS Water, my friend. So this is about my experience in Japan, and I customize it a little bit based on different purpose. So I think for those tool or framework, it should be more flexible, depending on the culture. I wish you can learn from my experience how you can customize things. And yeah, thanks for your attention. My name is Jasper. Thanks for your time. Thank you.